Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me to make this movie. I saw it, I think, about a month ago now, and I'm still just so excited about it. I'm telling all my friends, we all grew up on those albums, and we've always heard about this paradise that George Martin built, and now to get an inside, look and scoop and the information, and it's informative and entertaining and enlightening. I guess my first question is, all the research and everything you pulled all together, what surprised you most about George Martin's Slice of Paradise?
What surprised us most? I guess we thought that when we were doing the research, I mean, there's a lot of information about the police going down there and breaking up and all this friction, but I didn't expect it to be quite so conducive to sort of creativity. Like there was a lot of people who went down there and were able to create, like Brothers in Arms. They made their album, Dire Straits made that album in 3 days. And so we were kind of thinking, everyone's going to really struggle with it. But some bands were like, no, we smashed it. Like having that, ability to just be by ourselves and work with the producer was really great. So I think how great it was for a lot of these bands was probably the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, even like Roger Glover, like said, the album that they did down there in Gillian was, it wasn't like a big thing, but it was their favorite thing they did together. So yeah, I think it always, had such a special memory for people. It's like, it's like when you remember summer holidays or like those kind of moments in life. I think having that, time in the isolation for bands, brought back all these kind of memories where they, because they do so their schedules are so busy. They're always on tour. They're always constantly moving.
Yeah.
I think there was a great stillness and difference to a lot of the bands.
Yeah, that's what I think that was my biggest takeaway is that, now you hear about, so-and-so has gone to the beach in Australia to record an album, or Lenny Kravitz built a studio in the Caribbean, like someone else we know. And, it's just this fruitful, endeavor. And it seems to be mostly a blessing for all the artists, like you mentioned, and Dire Straits especially, knocking that iconic album out in such record time. But there's a part of the movie that really, really stuck with me. First of all, because I'm a huge Police fan, but they created their biggest selling album in Paradise, but they were recording it in separate rooms because they were on the verge of really breaking up. What do you make of the interviews? Because I was struck that you got to speak to the guys in the band. What do you make of those interviews that kind of maybe gave you an insight or a clue as to what was going on, that where some people found paradise, they almost felt like they were in hell?
Yeah, I interviewed Andy and Stuart, and Cody had already interviewed Sting when I came on board the film. But for me, I found their different personalities, because they're such strong personalities still. I found that quite exciting, how I kind of was trying to imagine that the energy they would have created being in the same room. But I think when we were watching the Jules Holland documentary, I just thought it was really fascinating how, things were starting to change in the way, people were recording music, and even Sting playing on the little drum machine, was something that like we would just do now on our iPhones and go, oh, put this beat down, I'm doing this. And, I felt like it was interesting to see his trajectory of like going, oh, I think I want to go out on my own, and I think I want to be more involved in all aspects of it. So I felt that was something for me that, was like time and place, and, what would it have been like if the Police were around, at the height of their career in 2021. So
Right.
I took away from it. That was interesting.
Well, I also found from the Sting interviews that there was a seed almost planted in him that we can see grew to fruition with his first solo album, and Bring on the Night and things like that. And it may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but on the other hand, one could argue that Sting went on to record some absolutely brilliant music for decades after that. What did you take away from that Sting interview?
Yeah, one of my favorite Sting tracks of all time, Englishman in New York, was recorded down Montserrat. Yeah, that's a Montserrat tune, and it's not even in the film because we couldn't fit in all these amazing stories, but that came from his solo time down on the island. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that the seed was planted when he was down there. I think that also the Police made amazing music together as a band, but I do think what Sting has done solo is it sounds so different from the Police. So I think that it's really incredible that he was able to kind of move from this band and then make something that is completely his own in his sounds. And you know, to Gracie's point, I do think with the Police, they were all, it was when you interview all three of them, they're all very much trying to put their mark on the band. So they all think that they were the most important person in that room, which is just fascinating. It's a really interesting case study, I think, of three very strong alpha males thrown into it.
Even the fact that Stuart would say, you know, our lead singer, even though like they're all friends, or like, you know, wouldn't acknowledge his name in the interview. I thought that was quite funny. But
and I thought it was funny too, because it's like, you know, we always want a movie to have a happy ending, whether it's Bohemian Rhapsody, and yes, Freddie died, but the way they wrapped it up at the Live Aid, I've always thought that recording of synchronicity would be a priceless a movie to be made by somebody. It's a study of human nature and alpha males and things like that. I was curious to do, were you able to visit the island from air or by boat or anything like that when you got to do some post-volcano shots? Were you guys there at all? And if so, what would you take away from that?
Yeah, we were down there. We did all the shots of the volcano and of the town of Plymouth, which was destroyed under the base of the volcano. We shot all that ourselves. And I'd been down to Montserrat as a kid multiple times. My mum was an artist there in the 70s. So I'd been to a lot of the places. I hadn't been that close to the volcano though, because it's in the exclusion zone and you have to have special permits to visit there. So when we shot at the base of the volcano, all the cars had to be facing outwards in case there was an eruption. And it was actually, Gracie was quite terrified, but we came by boat and left by boat. Just given that how much gear we had a team.
We also came by boat because I didn't want to take a little plane. I heard the Tony Iommi story and I was like, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of equipment, small plane, but the ferry was just as scary, I think.
Yeah, no small planes with that kind of stuff. No, thank you. You know, the other thing that really comes through your film profusely in the most enigmatic ways is it's almost like it's also a love letter to the people of that island, and their influence over the artists. I mean, you know, whether it's the chef or the help or people who worked there or the people who worked at the bars. I mean, they were as much a part of Air as the recording engineer in some ways, you know. And you know, what struck you about the people of that island that really is kind of magical?
When I was first putting together some of the research for the film prior to Gracie coming on board, I was like, the people of Montserrat have to be the heart of this film, because I met a lot of those people in the film and they are just like the most wonderful people on the planet. The people of Montserrat are so kind. They've suffered so much with that volcano, but you know, most of them are still very positive, and yeah, they're like no one I've ever met. So for me, it was like, they have to be the heart of this film. And then Gracie came on board, and the first interview that we did was with the bartender and X, who did the maintenance. And I think for Gracie, I mean, you can talk to this, Gracie, but when she met them, she was like, oh, okay, I get it now. They are, you know, definitely important characters in this story, and we can't really tell it without them.
Yeah, they just like, you know, I loved meeting people like Danny and obviously the chef, George Tappy Morgan, because, you know, we'd done a bunch of interviews and heard about them. So there was this like big hype. And then, you know, sorry, they're doing a fire alarm. Yeah, it was, and it's such a colourful small island as well. Like, I think the kind of setting and when you're there and the feeling of it feeling like hot and has all those kind of things that, you know, I just want to, you know, I could stay here for months. And, you know, and also I think when we first got there, you know, we wanted to get the key to our place we were staying, and they were like, oh, we don't have keys, you just leave the doors open. We were like, yeah, well, we've got like, you know, $1 million worth of equipment, so it'd be good to just get the keys so we can go out for dinner. And after 3 days, it's like no one had keys, and you just walked in, grabbed the camera, walk out, and it's like that, you know, kind of place, which is very different to when we arrived in Antigua.
Yeah, You know, it's weird. You just gave me chills. Like the idea that places like that still exist in this world really warms the heart. It really does. That's astounding. And I gotta ask, what, I mean, you're both here, so feel free to be honest, but what did you like most about working with the other?
Oh,
Well, for me,
You
I
go.
guess I'd worked on a documentary called The Last Impresario, which was 60 interviews with celebrities around the world, and doing my first big feature. So I think when Cody came to me with this, it felt like the next logical step for me to do something with music, and obviously there was a lot of British influence with it, and my documentary had been about a British impresario and theatre producer. And then Cody and I have very similar energies, very similar in a lot of ways, very fast, very want to get things done, very transparent. So it was a great collaboration, and it was great to have, for me, it was a bigger film than my first film, because Cody was obviously traveling and was there for all the interviews, and it was 2 camera setup. It was a much kind of bigger film. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, please.
No, I was just going to say that for me, because I'd had this personal connection to Montserrat and St George Martin's estate, and I knew a lot of the people we were interviewing, be it musicians or Montserratans. I think when it's a personal story, and as a producer, you're very much, when you're bringing on a director, you are handing over, the creative vision and all that kind of stuff. But what was so wonderful about working with Gracie is Gracie was like, no, this is our film together. It's not, you're a producer and you're a director. And so, Gracie absolutely very much drove that vision, but allowed me to be a part of that process and allowed me to work with her. And we, co-wrote in the edit together. And it was just the most collaborative experience that I've ever had. And now when I look at the film, I'm so proud of it, because I just feel like it's got both of our stamps on it, and it was just such a special experience for me. So I feel like sometimes you make films, you look back and you're like, oh, that was such a...
Yeah, we did feel like in the edit that me and Karen, the editor, were like the police. We were like, we had different opinions. I can't remember what section it was, but we were all kind of going, knocking heads, but we were like, maybe the best things to come out is that, thing.
And we're all in separate parts of Australia. It was very much like that for sure. But no, it was a great experience for me, definitely.
Is if I may, conjecture here, is one of the great things about being documentarians, the idea, like I consider myself a music maniac, and I knew about George Martin's Air Studios, and I knew it was recorded there, but yet I watched that movie and I had no idea how much was recorded there. I'm a huge Paul McCartney fan. I didn't know Tug of War was recorded there. I didn't know he brought Stevie Wonder down there. I didn't know they jammed in a bar till 4 a.m, but now I do. And it's all thanks to you. I mean, is that one of the more rewarding aspects of being a documentary filmmaker, is that there's a lot of things that people know a little bit about, but after watching a documentary, your world expands exponentially.
I guess, for us, because we aren't huge music buffs and, and fans in that way, and obviously we grew up in a different generation, I think we went into it very curious and not afraid to kind of ask, questions to the people in the interviews, like, that we just wanted to know the answer to, instead of, I think sometimes when you go in with so much information, you assume you know a lot and you're not listening as much, because you're kind of like, oh, I know that story, whereas when you don't know anything, it's like, oh, and then what happened? And oh, what? That's crazy. So I think it, it kind of could work to our advantage in that way, that, we weren't, we're coming from it from a different angle in that way.
And what was it that made you? I mean, there are fields that are tough to get into. Filmmaking is certainly probably in the top 10, top 5, maybe top 3, maybe number 1. I'm not sure.
I thought documentary was just an easier way to make a feature film. I'd been trying to get a film up when I was like 21, after I'd been at film school. It seemed like I couldn't believe films took 10 years to get up. So I made a bunch of short films. I finished film school at 17. I was like, and then I met Michael White at Cannes Film Festival, and it was that thing, I had access to him, had a camera. And I think, for me, it was like jumping out of a plane and going, well, I've got the talent, I've got the access, I can actually just go and keep shooting, and then I'll figure out how to finish the film. And then I think, the more, now that I've done more documentary, it's like, I didn't go to university, and for me, it's like a really interesting study and education on something that, but I think you have to 100% be interested in the subject that you're making the film about, of course. And I just always love, even, I've only read like 7 books in my life, but all 7 of them are autobiographies. I love true stories. So I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I also think there's a public appetite for that kind of thing now too. I think documentaries are really taking off. There's one, I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's called Summer of Soul. It's on Amazon, and I had no idea, but there was this Black cultural, literally Summer of Soul, the same summer as Woodstock, but all the headlines went to Woodstock. But it was like every weekend for an entire summer in Harlem. It's on, I think, Amazon Prime, and it's just like, we live in a time where we all want to know as much as we can about our past, and I think documentaries are just starting to scratch the surface, and it's got to be a really kind of exciting time, I would think, for you guys.
Definitely. Doco's kind of hot now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people I would never expect would invest time in a documentary or writing me saying, oh, I just saw this, I just saw that. I had no idea. I mean, it's just people, they're enriching people's lives. And I think it's quite a salute to you guys and people like you. And this has been a real pleasure to me. I absolutely adored the movie. My friends are beyond giddy that they get to watch it now. All the best to the two of you. Congratulations. And hopefully we can talk again one day.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. All the best.
Bye.
Cheers.